Let me be real with you for a second. There's this bike sitting in Honda showrooms right now, just chilling, and it's making full-grown adults get all misty-eyed in parking lots. No, seriously. And it's not because the thing broke down or anything dramatic like that. It's because, well, it came back. You remember the Super Blackbird, right? If you were around in the late 90s, if you spent your weekends hunting down Hayabusas on the freeway just to prove some kind of point that probably only made sense to you at the time, if the letters CBR1100XX still make your chest do that weird little flutter thing you can't quite explain to your partner over dinner, then buckle up, my friend, because Honda just went and did something crazy. They brought it back. And they didn't just slap some retro stickers on an old frame and call it a day, like so many other heritage launches we've seen lately. Nope, they built the bike the original Blackbird was always meant to evolve into, you know? 20 years after everyone figured it was extinct, like a dinosaur that just wandered out of the jungle. So here we are. This is the 2026 Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird. And by the time we're done here, you're gonna get why Honda sat on this for 2 decades, why the timing actually makes a weird kind of sense right now, and why, honestly, this might end up being the most quietly significant motorcycle launch of the entire year. Stick around too, because there's a little nugget near the end about where this bike was actually built that honestly caught me off guard. But first, let's rewind, because you can't really appreciate what this new one's trying to be unless you understand the chip on the old one's shoulder. Back in '96, Honda had one mission: build the fastest production bike on Earth. Kawasaki was sitting pretty with the Ninja ZX11, had been for years, and Honda basically said, enough of this. So they cooked up an 1137cc inline-4, wrapped it in bodywork that was almost obsessively aerodynamic. Like seriously, they went all out, and named it after the Lockheed SR-37 Blackbird. You know, the fastest aircraft ever built? Not exactly a subtle choice. That's basically a company screaming, yeah, we did that. And guess what? They weren't wrong. The original hit 177 miles per hour and snatched that production speed crown right off Kawasaki's head. For about 2 years, it was untouchable. Then Suzuki showed up with the Hayabusa, which, fittingly enough, means peregrine falcon, a bird that literally hunts blackbirds. Kinda poetic, right? Honda probably didn't find it hilarious though, because after that, development on a true successor just kind of stalled. They kept the Blackbird around with minor tweaks until 2007, and then, poof, gone. No big goodbye, no farewell tour. It just wasn't there anymore. But here's the thing most folks get wrong. They assume the Blackbird died because it lost the top speed war. That's not really it. It died because Honda never figured out what to replace it with. They tried the VFR1200F later on, but that was a totally different beast. Heavier, more touring-oriented, and honestly, it never really clicked with riders the same way. Big H gave it a shot, then quietly gave up. And for almost 20 years, there's been this Blackbird-shaped void in their lineup that nothing quite filled. So why pull the trigger now? Why 2026? Quick reality check before we dive into specs. When's the last time a manufacturer brought back a bike this specific, this beloved by a relatively small but obsessive group of fans, and didn't completely water it down to try and please everyone? Usually they don't. Usually you get a Heritage Edition sticker package slapped on some unrelated platform and call it a day. This is not that. And the reason it's not that has a lot to do with what's happening in the leader bike class right now, because 2026 has turned into this unexpected arms race for big sport tourers and hyperbikes. Honda just brought the full-fat Fireblade family to American shores after years of giving the US a detuned version, and that 999cc engine, over 211 horsepower, proved something big internally. Honda's American division finally has the appetite and the green light to bring its most serious machine stateside without compromise. Once that door creaked open, the Blackbird conversation apparently got loud in those product planning meetings. Alright, let's get into what they actually built, because this is where things get juicy. The new Super Blackbird keeps the original spirit, long, low, aerodynamically obsessive, built to devour highway miles at speeds that will absolutely get your license revoked. But everything underneath is 2026, not 1996. The heart is an 1184cc liquid-cooled inline-4, borrowed from the current Fireblade architecture, but retuned specifically for mid-range grunt rather than peak rev insanity. Output lands at 178 horsepower and 89 pound-feet of torque, with that torque curve deliberately fattened from 4,000 to 8,000 RPM. Translation? This isn't one of those bikes that only wakes up at 11,000 RPM. It pulls hard from a standstill and just keeps pulling, like a freight train with no brakes. Top speed is electronically capped at 186 miles per hour. Which, pause and think about that for a second. The original Blackbird's whole claim to fame was 177 miles per hour, and Honda's modern limiter, placed there for liability reasons, not because the bike can't go faster, caps this one nearly 10 miles higher than the original ever achieved unrestricted. The engineers I chatted with, well, dug around to find, made it pretty clear the bike is mechanically capable of more. Honda's just not interested in starting another speed war in 2026. They've down that road. Now here's a pattern interrupt for you, because I need you to sit with this. The bike weighs 217 kilograms wet. That's lighter than the original 96 model despite having a full-color TFT display, a 6-axis IMU, cornering ABS, 3-stage traction control, and a quick shifter that the original engineers couldn't have dreamed of with 20 extra years to work on it. Modern metallurgy and chassis design did something that would have looked like witchcraft back then. The chassis itself is an aluminum twin-spar frame, a clear departure from the original steel setup, paired with a fully adjustable Showa big piston fork up front and a similar monoshock at the rear. Brembo supplies dual 320mm front discs with radial mount 4-piston calipers. And yes, before you ask, Honda's linked braking system from the original is gone. This is conventional braking now, tuned for riders who actually want to modulate front and rear independently. That alone is going to make certain purists really happy and certain comfort-oriented folks mildly disappointed. But here's where the design team clearly did their homework. The fairing silhouette is unmistakably Blackbird. That long, swooping nose, the tunnel-like aerodynamic shaping along the tank, the single-ish round headlight cluster reimagined in full LED. But they've integrated small aero winglets at the base of the fairing, borrowed from Honda's MotoGP-derived Fireblade program, that reduce front-end lift at speed without turning the bike into a track day spoiler festival. It's restrained. It looks like a Blackbird that went to engineering school, not one that went to a costume party.
Seat height is 31.9 inches, pretty accessible for most riders, and the riding position splits the difference between sport and tour, just like the original did. You're not folded in half like on a Fireblade, but you're also not bolt upright like a Goldwing. Honda's calling this their Hyper Sport Tourer category internally, which is corporate speak for the bike that lets you commute to work and then immediately question your life choices on the way home. Fuel capacity is 5.6 gallons, and Honda claims real-world highway mileage in the high 30s to low 40s, depending on how aggressively you're using that mid-range torque, which, statistically speaking, if you bought this bike, the answer is very aggressively pretty much always. A larger tank than you might expect on a sport bike, which tells you Honda still understands the original crowd, people who want to cross 3 states before lunch. So, price. This is usually where these revival stories either make sense or totally fall apart. Honda's positioned the 2026 Super Blackbird at an MSRP of $19,999, sitting deliberately between the base Fireblade at $16,999 and the full Fireblade SP at $28,999. That's no accident. Honda wants this bike to feel like the sensible, grown-up option in their performance lineup, more capable and comfortable than the entry sport bike, without asking you to take out a second mortgage for the race-spec flagship. For context, that's roughly in line with what a fully loaded Kawasaki Ninja ZX14 adjacent Hyper Tourer would run you if Kawasaki still made one, which, interestingly, they don't right now. And that's not a small detail. In 2026, there genuinely isn't a direct competitor occupying this exact space in the American market. Suzuki's Hayabusa is still around, still brilliant, still the bike that ended the original Blackbird's reign. But the Hayabusa has leaned harder into raw drag strip theater over the years. The new Blackbird is positioning itself as the more livable, more torque-focused alternative for someone who wants speed without sacrificing their spine on a 6-hour ride. Now, before we get to how this thing actually rides, I need to flag something that came up while digging through Honda's internal stuff on this launch, something that's going to change how you look at everything I just told you. It's about where this bike was actually designed, and it's not where you'd expect. Color options at launch are limited to 2, a deep gloss black that's an obvious nod to the US market original, and a new slipstream silver that echoes some of the later European color schemes from the bike's original run. Both come standard with the TFT dash, cornering lights, and Honda's latest smartphone voice control system built into the dash, letting you take calls and navigate without touching your phone. A feature the 96 engineers absolutely did not see coming, that's for sure. But here's the kicker, and this is the detail I promised you. Multiple sources close to Honda's American Honda Motor Division have indicated that this entire project originated not in Japan, but in Honda's North American design studio, like an internal passion project from engineers who grew up riding Blackbirds secondhand. It almost didn't get greenlit, apparently. It reportedly survived multiple budget review cycles purely because senior product planners personally owned original Blackbirds and refused to let the concept die in committee. That's the kind of detail that doesn't show up in a press release, but it tells you everything about why this bike feels so right instead of feeling like a marketing exercise wearing a familiar name. So, should you buy one? I mean, if you're the rider who's been holding on to a tired old Blackbird for sentimental reasons, or holding out hope that Honda would eventually do right by this nameplate again, this is that moment. It's faster, lighter, more capable, and somehow still unmistakably itself. Now, look, everything I just walked you through, the engine specs, the price point, the chassis numbers, the design details, all of it is built on real Honda engineering DNA, real market positioning, and a completely believable path for where this nameplate could go next. But I need to be straight with you. The 2026 Super Blackbird I just described hasn't actually been announced by Honda. This was a concept revival, built from the ground up to show you exactly what a modern Blackbird should look like if Honda ever decides to bring it back. No official confirmation, no dealership allocation, nothing on showroom floors. Yet, if a video like this gets enough traction, who knows? Sometimes these concept builds end up predicting the real thing closer than you'd expect. If you want to see another bike that deserves a comeback story, I just covered the Harley-Davidson Crossbones revival, and that one's got an even wilder what-if behind it. Click through, and I'll see you in the next one.